Hello and welcome. Today, I'm going to review some work I did yesterday and this morning. Specifically, I've been setting up a chatbot to use Bard, Google's Bard. And this was a fairly complex project because it's dealing with a lot of technologies, not the least of which is Google Cloud, which seems to be kind of a pain in the ass. But then what isn't these days when it comes to technology? Actually, I shouldn't say that because OpenAI makes using their API very simple. But I find that Bard is just a little better at doing technical work, and that's what I'm interested in mostly. Uh, I also found out today that Bard is not nearly as good as Anthropic's Claude 2, which is much better at technology. It was really very helpful in writing some of the code uh, for this project. But in any case, let's run over the desktop and see what we can figure out here. So the first thing that I'd like to go over here is well, let's just run this to show you that it is working. And I'll just say hi. What's your name? Well, anyway, I'm going to hit Control C and stop this. So one of the things I need to do for this code is I need to put in a way to type exit or something like that so that I can get out without hitting the keyboard interrupt. So let's see. Let's just do a more of my, oh, what the hell is this thing called again? My bot 4. Oh, and of course, it helps to spell it correctly. All right, and so we're using subprocess requests and JSON here. And so this is the API endpoint, and this is the project ID, which is something you can just make up when you set up your project in Google Cloud. And this is the model ID here. And so while true, we get the input. And then we make this variable called requests under JSON, and that is equal to this. I guess this is a dictionary. And so we create this dictionary called user input. And then here we get the access token here. This is the way we authenticate. And you can see here in the code that you can't tell what the access token is. You have to get it from this G-Cloud software, which you probably don't have on your computer. We'll talk about getting that later. And so here's the URL that we create here. And this has the API endpoint, which is the URL up here. And then there's a path that uses the project ID. And this is just how Google sets this up. This is Google's path here. Project ID, which we're grabbing from above here, locations, US Central, publishers, Google, models, chatbot, Bison, :predict. And so what this is saying is that we're going to send this to the prediction engine here. And this is just some debugging, right? And then here we have some headers for this, including the access token. And here we get the response where we post to the URL that dictionary and the headers. And this is debugging here, this print statement. And this is also some error checking because I was getting a 400. So I needed to check that out, and the reason why. It had to do with the way that Google returns the results, the JSON file that they put together. And so here, this one here failed. So that's why it's got a comment on it. And I had to do it this way, content equals, and use the .get method here so that it could find it properly within the return JSON. And then I printed it out here. And that's it. It's a pretty simple, it's a pretty simple piece of code that runs easily. In other words, it's a nice start. And let me go over here for a minute. And this is Claude. And I asked Claude to do something that Bard was incapable of doing, which was to tell about, well, here's the question. If I move this to another Apple Silicon Mac, what are the steps needed to ensure that this works? For example, installing G-Cloud is a requirement. So here are some steps. This is just moving the, what is this? This is installing Homebrew. Here's installing Python. And here's installing G-Cloud. Now there's another way to do this. You can actually Google installing G-Cloud, and it will direct you to their site where there's a zip file that you can download and then install it that way. Once that's done, you have to run these commands. This G-Cloud auth login should pull up a browser window where you would click on your Google username and authenticate. And then this, you have to put in the project ID here to set the project. And if you don't have a request installed, now of course I did this all in a virtual environment, so I highly recommend that you do that. And it just gives a few other things about environment variables, credentials, etc. And what this doesn't talk about is all the stuff that you have to do inside of Google Cloud to get this to work. And that's really, I would say that was the hardest problem. You do have to enable the API, which is the Vertex AI, for your project. And you have to create an access token. I think that's all you need to do on Google Cloud. I did so many things yesterday, many of which probably were not required. So I'm guessing that this is what you need to do. Of course, you need to have a Google Cloud account that requires a credit card. And so when you set that up, you should get a $300 credit. And there is also a free tier for Google Cloud. So I don't know. I suspect that because I'm going to this particular this particular URL, I suspect that it's not even going to affect the charges for the $300 credit. I'm not sure about that though. Uh, Normally, you would use a model within your own project, and this, of course, is using requests. And if I can find that, here it is, import requests. I'm not sure that this is the fastest way to use the API. I don't know how requests compare to curl, for example. And so I'll do some playing around with that. But this is just a way to access the Bard API. I hope you found this helpful. And I do thank you for joining me.